I truly believe there's two types of employees, hunters and farmers, right?
I like that.
Your hunters are your salespeople, right? Like those are the people who thrive on the quote unquote kill, right? You have other people who that's not what they're comfortable with. But in a society, in a business, you need both.
On this episode of A Call to Leadership, the question looms among companies across the globe. Should we call back remote workers? Will they push back from the comfort of their home offices or their local coffee shops? Is the new normal normal? Or is back to normal worth going back to? Well, weighty questions, my friend, to unpack for our two-part in-house Business Monday conversation with experts Travis Revelle and Sam Salah. I can't wait for you to join us. I'm Dr. Nate Salah, and this is A Call to Leadership. Travis, Sam, here we are again. Wow. I feel like we just never left the room.
Right.
That's because we did.
That's what happened.
We're doing back-to-back episodes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see, wow, you guys don't ever change your clothes. Right. No, we do.
It's my favorite outfit, right?
Yeah. And so back-to-back episodes, if you haven't listened to the episodes on how we look at people in the workforce, whether they're at home or working in an office, definitely check that two-part series out. It's hot. But we are transitioning now to, okay, we have people who work for us. The work world is changing. Are intrinsic rewards the way to go? Is paper for performance the way to go? How do we compensate people with the carrots and sticks, with purpose, satisfaction, motivation? How do we keep them feeling like they're a part of the bigger picture of this organization and motivating them to do the best possible work they can do from a financial perspective? This is a big question. Mm-hmm. It's a huge question. You brought it up, Sam, in some of our discussions that we need to talk about this. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll take the first part of it if you don't mind. No, I think that's integral in getting maximum performance out of your employees. I mean, if your compensation is flat, you're going to receive flat performance, in my opinion, and what I've seen.
And when you say flat, you just mean
they're going to do just enough.
Hour, $10 an hour.
Going to do just enough. In my organization, I have I see all these different angles. So my direct sales organization, 100% commission, 100%. But there's guys who are making life-changing income, like a real estate agent or a mortgage broker, the 80-20 rule type deal, like high commission, and they're making high compensation. But you can have a little bit of both, right? In any kind of atmosphere, right? But I'm a firm believer in performance-based compensation, whether that performance-based compensation is a salary and commission, or a salary and profit sharing, but something that incentivizes your employees to do just more than what's expected, right? And if you don't put that out there, why would you expect them to do more? And a lot of times when I'm talking and I'm speaking to other entrepreneurs that are struggling with getting better performance out of their employees, the first thing I ask is how are they compensated?
How do you think compensation is tied to how they feel about your valuation of them? Is that something that you see?
I think they look at it like I'm paid to do a job. If I do that job, why should I do more? And I always believed in building performance-based compensation. So you have this minimum, right, that you expect, and you're paid this salary or this hourly rate. A base. But to get this performance, you put the incentives there to motivate them to reach that point. In turn, you making more revenue, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that, for some reason, is still foreign to a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs. They just want to pay people X, and they wonder why they're not getting more out of their employees. And it's directly connected to maybe they do feel their self-worth is less because you're only valuing them this way. Hey, I think you're better. I think you can earn more money. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw these incentives out there. And if you hit these goals, you're going to be rewarded. Wow, that's amazing. That motivates me. That makes me want to work harder.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think pay is a piece of the puzzle, right? It's not the puzzle, because you could pay me a lot of money and there's certain jobs I just won't do because I'm not going to be satisfied doing them. But, you know, in my organizations, obviously there's a sales component. Those salespeople are paid a base, and then they're paid commission. When you look at the other components of my businesses that they're not sales driven, right? They're more task driven positions. I do profit sharing, and I do that for a couple different reasons. One, as Sam stated, I want to maximize the performance of my employees. But another reason I do that is because I want the employees to view that business as theirs, right? If there's a ownership, quote unquote, ownership stake, right? I think that they treat their jobs differently. And so what I really try to do is I try to tie in whatever that role is in the organization. That role is important, right? It's a piece of the overall process. And so I tie that into, I make sure that they understand how important that role is, what that role means to the other roles within the organization. And then I tie them into profit sharing from the company's perspective. When the company does better, obviously as an owner, I do better, but I want my team to also do better. And I have found that allows me to kind of get everybody rowing in the same direction at the same time, because they're all kind of focused on how do we maximize revenue. One portion of maximizing revenue is keeping costs low. So employees understand, right? Here's how much it costs to buy supplies for the office. So if we go through a lot of supplies, great, if that's what we need to do. But if we're wasting supplies, that's coming off of the overall revenue of the organization, which means it's coming off of your profit sharing percentage. And when you really do it well and you get everybody kind of rowing, you will watch your profits start to increase, because people they want to be rewarded for doing good things.
And it's important you bring that up, because it's not just about increasing revenue. It's also about decreasing cost. Mm-hmm. And if we can get our people to be a part of that process and see the reward for it and be a part of receiving the reward, it only will increase their desire. Not everyone, of course, but in general. And another thing that's important, I think that you both kind of key in on this, is how we structure that incentive based on how we communicate what's important. And I'll give you an example. There's been studies that reveal that just profit sharing for the sake of a token benefit it actually can be counterproductive. It becomes an expectation, and then it just becomes part of my salary.
Part of my pay.
And so even the rewards that are profit, or even that annual bonus, the Christmas bonus, right? Remember Christmas vacation, right?
Vacation.
Right? Classic case of like, I now expect this. And what happens? Things go wrong, right?
But that's not, to me, that's not, and I think Travis would agree, is that's not performance-based compensation, because that's strictly paid off a group of people's performance, and you get a percentage of that at the end of the year. Not your own performance.
Correct. Yeah, because in the argument in the movie was, look, I just thought it'd be better to save some money and not give everybody a bonus at the end of the year, right? I mean, you're right. It's cumulative across the board, and you're talking, but you're also talking about cumulative profit sharing.
Yeah, which is great. Yep. Yeah.
But I think the key is, when we're talking about that, I think the key is communicating the benefit for each individual and communicating the wins along the way.
I communicate the wins and the wins and the losses.
Yep.
Right? Because I don't share full P&L statements, right? But I share enough, right? Here's our expenses that we had broken down.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that it almost becomes a holding a group accountable. They start to hold each other accountable, right? Like all of a sudden, like, hey man, busting my butt, but over here, this guy's blowing through, reams of paper. I'm just, he's, in the laboratory business, right? I mean, things are extraordinarily expensive, right? I mean, we've got pieces of equipment that are $1 million, right? And so, if that machine goes down, we're in trouble. And so people can see what's happening. You know what I mean? They can see what's going on. And again, it comes from my personal way that I trust my employees. I want to be open with my employees. I want them to understand how the business runs. I want them to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just the task that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And when money comes into the organization, I'm a firm believer that that's not my money. That's the organization's money, right? They're a part of that organization. They help make that money. And so I think that, the best case scenario for me is we have a really good quarter and there's a profit share. Mm-hmm. And then we have a not so great quarter and all of a sudden there's not that profit share, and you explain the whys, it clicks because it doesn't become a part of guaranteed salary, right? Yeah. It becomes, I really enjoyed that $1,200 bonus check that I got last quarter. Now I have a $300 bonus check.
Now it's a letdown, but it's a learning experience that if we don't do it as a team, it doesn't happen. Or we don't care about the team and we just want to make money for ourselves, which you've experienced that before, where, so profit sharing and performance-based, that's two different ways to compensate and two different ways to reward, right? For some people, they could care less about how the organization's doing on a whole, but if I go out 8 hours a day and I crush my sales, I should make my money, and it's for some that they would, and some are not even really money motivated people. I've been in situations where in the service-based industry that I've seen where you throw out incentives for people and they really don't perform any differently. And, that's an interesting thought that you could throw incentives out there and good incentives, but it doesn't make them work harder or better.
Perfect example. This is back in 2010, and we were launching all these offices. You remember, I was having you run the sales side, and Sam was working with these accountants to increase the volume of new clients coming into these, because we launched a bunch of kiosks, right, in these malls, and we were just giving it a demo run, see if we wanted to do it. And you're like, Nate, none of these accountants are incentivized by me telling them I'm going to have, an extra $50 or $100 or whatever. And you're right. I mean, it's also individual based. And this is what we talked about on our previous episode of when we talked about incentivizing people to come into the office, right? Mm-hmm. You have to know your people.
Yeah, and it's a different culture. So a service-based culture is different than a sales-based culture, right? So service-based culture, you have a trade that you're good at. Come in. If you have a good skill set, you're probably getting paid well. This little bit of extra money to get you to the next level, to get more out of you, may not be as motivating, right? To some who is in a sales environment, who's all about reaching the next level of compensation, right? So again, you could do straight commission, you could do base, or you could do commission and base, right? I feel like the way that needs to be structured is you have a minimum performance, like I said earlier, that you need to get out of that person. To incentivize them to go beyond that, that's where your performance-based compensation needs to come in, right? And then when someone hits that, it's a big deal. Hey, so-and-so just hit their numbers. They made X, use them as an example in a company meeting, hopefully in person. Use them as or on a Zoom, that they performed well, right? And they made this extra money. But it's very hard to, especially in a sales atmosphere, 100% in a sales business, to motivate someone without some kind of financial incentive.
No, I mean, because I truly believe there's two types of employees: hunters and farmers, right?
I like that.
Your hunters are your salespeople, right? Like those are the people who thrive on the quote unquote kill, right? And they're going to get a level of satisfaction off of just making a sale, right? And that sale tied to compensation is important. You have other people who that's not what what they're comfortable with. But in a society, in a business, you need both, right? You need both. You can't just have all hunters.
Right.
Be back to hunters and gatherers. You know what I mean? Like, and you can't just have farmers, right? Like, you got to have both individuals. And so for me, in my organizations, the salespeople, they are heavily compensated on their ability to close deals and drive revenue. And they're paid on a revenue model, right? They get a percentage of revenue. So it's not a dollar amount per sale, because one sale could be $1 million a month. Another sale could be $5,000 a month. Those two sales are paid differently. And when it comes to the individuals that are more task oriented, right? The salespeople can go kill it and have all the sales you want. But if you don't have the people who are doing the tasks that are back at home office, well, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose that customer. That customer is going to walk, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So tying those two jobs together is one of the most challenging parts of leadership, right? But it's also defining, this is the organization. These are all the pieces we need. All the widgets need to be turning the right way, doing the right thing for the watch to work, right? One little screw off out of 1,000 screws that are probably in my watch. One's off, watch doesn't work, right? So everybody, there's not one role that's more important than another role. It's everybody understanding what their role in the organization is specifically, but also how does that role translate into the operation of the entire organization. And I think you do a couple things with that there, right? You give people the ability to feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves, which is usually something everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something. And you also, even the most mundane role in your organization, you show the importance and how important that role is to everybody else's role. And you pay them a good base, right? I pay for A players because that's who I hire. So I'm always kind of at the higher end of a salary range because I expect good A players, great benefits, you know what I mean? All the things that come with it. Mm-hmm. And this profit share is when the organization does really well and there's more profit that comes in, everybody gets a piece of that pie, right? Everybody gets a piece of that pie because we're all rowing together and we did great. And I think what's incredible is when you can, you see the look on their face when they do it. And then I also think it's incredible when you take an L sometimes, right? I think it's important in life. You have to take a loss sometimes and really let that feeling sink in, right? And it's I never want to feel that again. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to not feel that loss.
Let me show you an example of where this was performance-based compensation was a catalyst for performance, right? Because that's what we all want, right? So I had a stint outside of my entrepreneurial journey where I was a manager at Blockbuster Video. I ran a location, right? And it wasn't a sales atmosphere. It's renting videos, and this is taking everybody back pre-Netflix, right? They had the Movie Pass. Do you remember that?
Half the people listening to this probably have never been into a Blockbuster.
Listen, we're going to take you back, okay?
Right.
We're going to go back in time where we actually picked our movies up from a store. Okay, so they had this.
It's after 2 hours of looking around.
Yeah.
It's like an event.
Right,
You're like, let's go to the movie store and let's go walk around for 2 hours and find one movie to watch for an hour and a half.
Right.
If you ever want to know an example of a company that didn't adapt and went out of business,
Blockbuster.
Oh, we got to have an
was
episode on all of those. Yeah.
that was one. So anyway, I had a sales background, long history in sales, and they called me to interview me or whatever. They're like, hey, we got this Movie Pass product. We're moving to we want to increase sales and increase subscriptions and all this other stuff. And I'm like, they don't have salespeople there. Like, they don't understand sales culture. So I got hired on. I took over this location. So they're like, we want you to sell, 5 Movie Passes a day, I think it was, or something like that. And I'm sitting here looking at these employees and I'm talking to them and I'm like, so, we got to do this. And the mentality was, they don't pay me to do that. Like, why would I do that? Like, whether I do my job one way or another, whether I make this is like, so I'm like, okay, so how do I fix this culture that is not a sales culture, that is a clerking culture, like a grocery store, right? And obviously I was incentivized to do my job, right? And there was a breakdown in compensation because I was compensated to do those things and I was tied into things and they weren't, right? So I created incentives outside of the company's incentives to get my people to perform, right? And to sell these movie passes, right? We were selling like 15 a day. Okay. Like everyone in the company was emailing me like, what's going on? What are you doing? How are you doing this? You know? And it was such a simple fix. It was incentivizing them, right? And then tying them into the success that we had. And I led by example. So I was a sales guy. So I was like, this is how you sell it. This is how you pitch it. This is how you close it. This is how you place it. While you're clerking, this is how you place this product and you'll be successful. And it happened.
And you know what, Sam? I mean, you part of that, and I love that story because part of that is teaching people that everybody's in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody in the organization is in sales. I'll give you an example. You talk about clerking. Literally yesterday, I was at my grocer checking out, and the young man who was checking me out was chomping on some potato chips. And he stopped while I was getting ready to check out. And as he was getting my receipt, he put another one in his mouth. And as he's telling me, have a nice day, he's got his mouth full of chips. And I'm like, dude, you just like killed that sale. That sale.
It's disgusting.
First of all, it's nasty.
Right.
Who hasn't told you that you should not be eating at while you're checking people out? It's not professional. And he's clerking, but he's creating a bad image for that organization, and it's reducing the quality of the experience of the sale that's happening right then and there.
But he doesn't look at it as a sale.
He doesn't look at it as a sale. He's like, hey, I rung him out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did his job.
He did his job. Yeah, he did his job. So, you know.
But what I'm saying is that as you tie in the incentivizations to that experience, right? And create an organization around that, that changes the dynamic of behavior.
Yep.
And that's really what we're talking about here is how do we change the dynamic of behavior so that everyone does row in the same direction, that we have our hunters and our, I love it. I love how you describe the farmer's mindset. And, you've got different people who perform different roles within an organization based on their own skill sets, right? Some are rainmakers, some are going to work the back office, things like that. I think once you start to tie everybody into that, then you start to see a collective around how can we optimize the experience everyone's having. For example, and it doesn't have to be, it can be on the macro level or the micro level, right? The individual performance incentive base, or on the macro level, profit sharing, or other things. For example, we picked up a couple hundred new clients last year because there was a retiree that wanted to send his business our way. Well, through that, we had some additional revenue that came in, and I shared with the team that we were going to make some upgrades. We're going to upgrade some aspects of our ERP system and whatnot. And why? Because we want to have an organization that serves your needs better, serves the client's needs better, so that we could all function more effectively. And so that was a macro level incentivization based on the extra revenue that was coming in. And people appreciate that. So there's all different kinds of ways we can make this happen. But I think the part of it is you communicate. It's so critical to communicate, like you said, the why. Why we're doing this, why it's important. So then what happens? People start thinking, oh, well, if I can be a part of that driving more revenue in, new clients or however we do it, then there's going to be some intrinsic and extrinsic reward I'm going to get.
100%. And it's funny that almost every conversation we have amongst each other, right, when we're talking about these different topics, it all comes back to communicating, right? I mean, if you're communicating to your team the whys, why is it important to the organization? Why is it important to you? Why am I doing this? It's amazing just how much people can jump on board. But I was in an organization where we didn't get, the salespeople got paid off, commission off their sales, but the customer service people got paid off of customers taking, these little snapshots and giving their feedback and doing a little survey, right? And they had a high survey, they got rewarded, and the customer service of the entire company increased because you were rewarding those behaviors, right? When you reward the behaviors that you want, you get better behaviors.
And the rewards can differ.
It can differ.
Because some people, like I said, it's a gift card, $100 gift card for doing a job.
An extra day off.
Like I said, everybody's completely different.
Correct.
But, like you have, as a leader, you have to find what motivates people. That's your job.
It's your job.
Yeah, and it's not going to be cookie cutter. I can't sit here and give you a solution and say, hey, if you do this compensation, you're going to get more out of every one of your employees. No. But if you hire the right people that you want to be motivated by this type of compensation, you will get a better response, right? So some of us have the wrong people working for us.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
And what's funny is I literally have a case study at home, right? I've got twins, and they couldn't be more different when it comes to what motivates them to do something, right? One wants a pat on the back, the other one wants something tangible, you know? And so any aspect of our lives, we need to understand the people that we're leading, how to motivate, and how do we get the behaviors that we want out of them, right? Whether it's your wife, whether it's your kids, whether it's your employee, whether it's your boss, right? Like, how do you understand what's driving that individual, and how do you reward the good behaviors and eliminate the bad behaviors, to modify their behaviors to go in the same direction? And a lot of people it's paid, but there are a lot of people who, you know, I mean, there's a study, right, that once you make $70,000 a year, anything over, it doesn't matter. Now, that's hard for me to fathom, right? Too. Because I'm money motivated.
I seen that, and I don't know.
Right. But, you know, it makes sense, right? Like at a certain point, income threshold, you can live a comfortable life. And so maybe it's not money, maybe it's time, right? You want more time, right? Or you want a trip. You know, companies throw on, you know, President's Club, President's Circle. I mean, everybody names it different, but it's basically the same thing. It's a 3-day trip to, you know, Mexico or something like that. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways you can
some
do
people
it.
want more
pizza
continuing
party
education.
when you're kids, right? Like
you
know, you read 100 books and you get a little personal pizza. I mean, that personal pizza costs $3. You know what I mean? And you're going to read 100 books. Like if you really did the math on that from the time you put into it when you're a kid, you'd be like, nah, this is not worth it for this, right? But it was the reward. It was the accomplishment of doing that.
Well, you had mentioned in another episode about the janitor, who got a ring when the team won.
The team won, yeah, and he was ecstatic, right? So to refresh for people who didn't hear that, a janitor at a high school, the high school won state championship, and they gave the janitor a state championship ring because he played a part. He had a role. Right? If the lockers weren't clean, right? What happens, right? Like you come and you're getting ready to, you know, go play a game and you don't have clean uniforms, like whatever it is, right? Like everybody in the organization, no matter what role they play that role, or you wouldn't have hired that position. That position doesn't matter. Why is that person there, right? Not the person, but the position. Why is the position there if it doesn't matter to your organization? It matters, right? And so finding what motivates individuals and reward them. You're going to get better behavior. We're human beings.
Yeah,
right.
I think the cheat code in keeping people is having a great company culture and compensating people appropriately for the job they do. If those two things are done properly, you will have a better time, a better organization that will have better performance, get more out of their people.
Better retention.
And tying the reward, as you've said, to the desired outcome.
Yep.
Yeah. Right? That's so critical. And it reminds me of Musk. And if you haven't listened to the episodes on innovation that we had, go back, because in that we talked a little bit about Musk and his employees and how he incentivizes them to be innovative.
Yeah.
And if they're not, that's a problem. Right? So because innovation for his organization is the essential. It's speed to innovation, and it's not just for his in company. He sees that as an overarching perspective of all humanity. That's why he made all of his designs open source. So he's like, look, this is I mean, it's totally like counterintuitive what you would do in an organization, hide trade secrets. It's like, no, it's open source because the idea is proliferation of innovation, and so he ties all of his incentives to that in his organization. So you've got to know in your organization what is most important, what are the outcomes that you hope to achieve, and then you tie all of those myriads of incentivizations that we're talking about. Some of them can be intrinsic, some of them can be extrinsic. It's marrying them together. Some of them are at the macro level, some of them are at the micro level. But and someone listening might say, well, that's so daunting. There's so much to do here. Yeah, that's running a business.
It's running a business.
I mean, you got to get on board with it, because if you don't, you're not going to understand how to truly maximize the possibilities of all the wonderful people who you have on your team.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think compensation is a big piece of culture. I mean, I kind of talked about it as two different things, but I mean, it all kind of feeds into the overall culture, you know? People will work less for a work environment they love being in. That's a fact.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. 100%.
Yeah, it's a fact. So that should be an important piece of your vision and for what you have for your company is to create an amazing culture that people want to be at.
And that's where I think people need to, like, people who, you know, kind of pick up on your point, Nate, they're listening to us right now and they're overwhelmed. They're like, holy crap. Yeah. How do I do this? Well, I would say the first thing you do is you work on your culture, right? That's the most important, right? Like if you can pay people, like I said, you could pay me $500,000 a year to go dig ditches. I'm going to make it a week. Literally. Like I'm going to make it a week. Like I'm just not going to physically want to do that job, right? Or you could pay me $150,000 a year to sit here and talk on a podcast. I'm going to choose this job 10 out of 10 times because it's what I want to do, right? Understand that you're building a culture. It just starts with asking your employees, what would you change? Right? What does a good workplace look like?
And
for
that's
you?
that's why I develop, creating culture, especially when you have multiple leaders involved with different leadership approaches and different perspectives on how a company should be ran. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important in partnerships to have a synergy in that direction, right? And it's when you say culture to some people, it's almost like what does that mean exactly? Like, what do you mean by work culture? Like, we come in, we run this business, we do our jobs, we get, we produce results, we just want to make money, just like the very like shallow, mm-hmm. like part of being an entrepreneur. But then you start like talking about what we're talking about, which is culture and environment and leadership, which honestly, I feel like is more of a focus now than it used to be. Like, like people talk, like when we were coming up as entrepreneurs, I think we were natural leaders in a lot of ways, and there's natural leaders out there. But have you ever sat there and was like, all right, how can I be a better leader, and how am I going to apply myself and learn from other people to just step up to be this amazing leader that people want to work for, right? Yep. And, my team in my organization at Unwired, we all feel vested. We're all partners in this goal, in this, we all wake up every day trying to get to the next level. Our leadership is vested. They are invested in what we want, what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's rare. You know what I mean? That is a rare thing.
It is a rare thing. Yeah. A personal story. So, when I started I won't name companies or names, but started at a company, I was 22 years old. My boss at the time, good guy, right? Very highly educated. He's now the CEO of, Fortune 5 company. Mm-hmm. And incredibly large global company. His adage was he paid people just enough to not quit. Right? You pay them just enough so they don't quit.
That's not an old theory.
It's still pervasive today, yeah. Right? Like, I'm going to pay you just enough so that you quit. Now, that employee is not invested in your company, right? They don't feel a part of your company, right? I'm trading what my dream is, right? What's the minimum amount that I can trade my dream to just pay my bills, right? But in this era, and we talk about this a lot, this change that we're in, you're looking at max employment across the country. Now, yeah, there are a lot of people who are not working, but they're not going to work, right? They're just not going to work, right?
It's
Their
not
workforce
because there's no jobs. It's more because they don't want to.
They don't want to work, right? Yeah. And you're not going to change that mentality, right? Like you're just not, right? Until they have to, right? And that's not something as an entrepreneur that we're going to change society and force people to work. So you have a limited workforce. How do you become a place that people want to work? Because there's a lot of options. If you're paying somebody $13-14 an hour, there's a lot of places right now that they can go make $16 an hour. And if they're not happy where you're working, they're taking that money. You know what I mean? Like they're taking that money. And so I think having a work culture, a strong performance-based incentives, right, of the organization, those two things go hand in hand with each other. And if you're not doing that, right, you may be getting by today, but you're literally $1 more an hour offer away from losing your people. Right?
Yeah, and if your employees leave you for $1 an hour, then you probably didn't create enough value for that dollar.
Well, that's it. Creating enough value for it. And I think that's where many organizations don't focus on our vision, our mission, and our values. Those three pieces that develop your culture. Because if you create a compelling enough vision that has a worthy cause, then people will be attracted to that. And so that's part of it. And then the logistical questions come up, right? Which is, how much is it going to pay? How much, what are my incentives? How much time do I get off? What's the flexibility? What are the benefits, right? But it really starts with, is this a vision that is personal to me? Mm-hmm. And somebody might say, well, I have a construction company, or I'm in, food services, or I'm in manufacturing. How could I even begin to have an incentivization based on a bigger vision because it's a widget? Well, that's the wrong attitude. Totally. It's totally the wrong attitude, because as soon as you have that attitude, you've already lost the fight of creating a worthy cause around whatever you do. And I always said this before, accounting is not sexy, right? But if you're in the love business because people are stressed out, it totally changes the environment. Because when people come in, they're like, we have problems. We don't like the IRS, right? Well, let's help you solve that problem and bring those stress levels down. So I don't care what kind of business it is. I think that's a cop-out.
It's a cop-out.
Yeah.
And if you, shameless plug here, but if you really feel like that in your organization, please reach out to us, because I promise you I can define what you're doing and how in a larger instance you can pay somebody. Manufacturing, quality control, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's simple, right? I mean, gas station, right? What gas station are you going to go to? If it's some random mobile gas station or a Quick Trip, right? Where are you going?
The reason.
I'm going to Quick Trip.
Mm-hmm.
People are happy there, right? I get taken care of. The customer service is there. So no matter what, Nate, you pegged it, right? No matter what role you're in an organization, you're in sales. Whether you realize it or not, you're in sales. And no matter what organization you have, you're in customer service. Those are two things that just are what they are. Sales and customer service are there. Mm-hmm. And you can tie a compensation model into those. You can. And you know what? Like, I think you're going to start seeing a big press from a unionization standpoint, right? And I'm not pro-union or anti-union, right? But if you are taking care of your people, they're not gonna try to unionize on you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not gonna happen. And so I think that when you look at a Starbucks, right? You look at, which is starting to see unionization, right? They're closing down stores. There's this struggle that's going on. But Starbucks revenue hasn't dropped. You know what I mean? like they're still selling a lot of coffee. 66% of the people on this panel went to Starbucks this morning and got a coffee. You know what I mean?
And if I didn't quit drinking coffee, I would have mine as well, right?
So it's just, there isn't an organization, company, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't have a sales and customer service aspect to it that you could compensate off of.
I can also attest, I think that you have people that pay their employees amazing, let's say the highest tier, but almost they're paying so much that they haven't been able to build performance-based incentives in, because they're paying at such a high rate mm-hmm. that maybe they should have paid a little less and created a higher ceiling instead of just, because at the end of the day, we all know, especially from the background, let's just talk from a retail perspective. We always looked at the compensation, here's your base, but to get to this level of compensation, you're going to be you're going to be selling, mm-hmm. right? I think what does happen sometimes is everybody's reacting to keep their people so much that they're, and this has happened in the last year. You're paying people absolutely the most and that you've ever paid people. I can attest to that. People are telling me the same thing. This is what I'm hearing. I've never paid people like this before. Which is great, right? People mm-hmm. are getting compensated for their jobs. The question is, if your P&L doesn't support more money, how are you going to pay people more money? So then the Fortune 500 company comes in, pays that more money, and takes that employee from that small business. So as a small business, what do you have to offer?
Well, and I think just throwing more money at it is also what people would consider it's the lazy way.
Well, again, your culture is what keeps people, is to me the major factor and what keeps people from leaving to work somewhere else.
Well, and I would say, I would add to that, people don't work for companies, they work for people.
Yeah. Correct.
Right? And so if you're, because somebody in a large organization like a Chick-fil-A or any of these larger companies would say, or a Starbucks would say, it's us against them, right? They're a big corporation. They represent the shareholder values or the shareholder revenue and just increasing that value. And yeah, we're here. They talk the talk, but at the end of the day, I'm expendable. I'm just a number. And that's a real concern, because how do you then tie compensation at this larger level, not just a small organization, but at the larger level where it's actually authentic? And it's not just, well, here's what we're doing because a consulting firm said that this is the way we're going to increase productivity and retention. That's a real problem that a Starbucks is, and that's why you do have, the push toward unionization, because it's a voice. Now we have a collective voice because we need one. We have a problem. And so the question then arises, okay, guys, this makes sense on a small business level, but how do we translate that to a big business?
Right. Because you can move in a small business environment, you can move a lot quicker, which is an advantage. You don't have these, corporate layers that things have to go through. And how big companies are so hard to change, right? But a small business, you can change. You can change fast.
And in large part because the owner, right? You can usually have a conversation with the owner, right? Well, you've got a CEO. Now the question is, I think that the next question I would ask is, how then, if engagement with the leadership team or the CEO has an effect on your culture, right? Look at CEOs who are engaged in their culture. Look at an Elon Musk at the time, of course. Look at a Steve Jobs, right? Look at CEOs. Well, I was talking about, I think on a previous episode, about the Home Depot CEO who is writing letters individually to employees, handwritten, ink, not not just a form letter, right? The engagement level increases that connection, because back to the question mark of even I think in some ways increasing performance compensation without the culture that cares about a person. In other words, the only reason why I'm giving you this additional compensation is because I don't want you to quit, right?
Right.
Just like your original leader. You've got to go beyond that.
You've got to understand what makes your people tick. Like, you just have to. And listen, it's not daunting, right? So whether you're in an organization of 1,000 people or you're an organization of 3 people, it's literally having a conversation, right? Ask somebody.
Not everybody's going to work for you forever.
No.
At the end of the day,
right.
I mean,
and that's okay.
That's the expectation.
And that's the thing. Like, that's the thing. When people, like, your job as a leader, right, as an organization, is to grow your people, right? If they grow to a point to where they outgrow you, you did your job.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a bad thing. But I think that, right, like, have a conversation. And how hard is it to say, hey, Nate, so, I'm reviewing, your job duties and everything. And how's it going? Like, how's your job? Like, how's everything going? What can I help you with? But what motivates you? That's something I ask on an interview question, right? I jump right to the front, right? When I'm interviewing somebody, I ask them straight up, what motivates you? What are you motivated by?
Yeah.
It's
a great first question.
What do you want?
Says it all.
Yeah. And the next question is, what do you want to be? Like, when you're a kid, what did you want to be? Right? Like, so I can understand, right? Where is this person? Where are they coming from? Right? They wanted to be a firefighter. Why didn't you be a firefighter? You know what I mean? Like, I needed to make money. Okay, cool. So what motivates you? What do you do in your spare time? Like, I ask so few questions about the actual job itself, right? Because I want to understand who this individual is, right, in front of me. And if you haven't done that, okay, you can start today. Start having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
If you don't understand your people, if you don't understand what motivates your people, they're not just coming for a paycheck, right? They want to do more than that. But if that's all you're offering, you're a very, very, very one-sided organization.
You have deficient leaders and you have deficient employees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can have either one. You can have a very, a great leader with deficient employees that maybe shouldn't be working for you. So you make a change and get the right people, right? Or you have leadership that's deficient that has the right people that they're just not getting recognized and rewarded the right way, and they could be so much better, right? So, like you said, everyone's motivated differently, and getting to know them as a human being really enlightens you on what really drives them. So,
yeah, because they got bills to pay, right? I think one of the first question is compensation is an essential aspect of that, right? Absolutely. But when money's off the table, as has been said, what else is there that brings me joy in this organizational environment, right? Because if it's only money, and I'm glad you brought that up, then the highest bidder wins.
Highest bidder. Yep.
And that's not a game that you want to play because it's unsustainable.
Unsustainable, and especially for the entrepreneurs that we're probably talking to today. It's an unsustainable model.
Yeah. So there's got to be something else involved. The old pitch that Jobs gave to John Scully when he wooed him for a year, and the money was no object, right? Scully wasn't ready to move from Pepsi, and he sold him with one line: "Do you want to sell soda water the rest of your life? You want to come join me and change the world?"
That's a hell of an offer.
But that's how I believe the most resonant and effective way to build a culture. Like, let's change our little world, whatever it looks like. It doesn't have to be, the disruptive innovation of going to another planet. Like, let's change our world together. But you have to be bought in as a leader.
Absolutely. 100%.
You have to be the one that leads that charge authentically, transparently, and with the right measures and the right metrics to continue pushing that forward.
You cannot fake the funk when it comes to this. Like, you just can't. Like, if people see through, and it actually is insulting, right? It's insulting when you have a leader stand up in front of you and try to sell you on some vision that damn well they don't believe in as well, right? You know it. You can see through it. But when you have somebody that actually gives a crap, they care about you as a person, they care about you as an employee, they care about the organization, you start to tie these things together, and people will go to war with you.
Yeah.
Like, they will go to war with you. That's the power that you have. And so compensation is an important part, because like you said, everybody needs to survive, right? We can't just live off of kumbaya, right? But once your bills are paid for, what are you doing? Right? You're trading time with the people you love the most in the world to go spend time with other people that are strangers. Why am I doing that? There has to be something more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this then brings us back to the compensation piece starts long before we even get to running the numbers. It starts with, what's our mission? What's our vision? What do we value? And then having the conversation with each individual who's possibly going to board our team to say, do we share in these places? Do we share that purpose? And then let's talk about how we can build these different pieces together to help you maximize your value, maximize your experience. But I preface that within the confines of these boundaries and borders. So if it goes outside of that, in other words, here's our macro structure, here's our micro structure. If that doesn't work for you in this position that's available, then I want to free you. If at some point later it no longer works for you, that's okay too. You don't want to have high turnover, certainly, but like you said, not everybody's meant to be with your company forever, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely okay. But I think we almost think that that's like that. Like, why would someone leave?
Yeah, I was paying them well, and I had I thought I had all the metrics just right.
It stinks to lose people, for sure. I mean, we've all been there. It's never a fun experience, but people move on, and the ceiling cannot be the same for everybody.
No.
At the end of the day.
No, and you mentioned, but I want to come back to that. You mentioned the way you treat your organizational employees as partners. And you said, we partner together. Back to your point too. They won't ever see you as a partner unless you live up to that. Otherwise, they'll just see you as another person who owns a business, who talks the talk. Yeah, we're partners.
So I have I'm not going to say the name, but I have a specific employee text me yesterday. And just to let me know what a great job he's done the last few weeks and how he's been absolutely crushing it. And he's got my number, obviously. Can call me anytime. He's not in leadership or anything like that. But hey, just want to let you know I'm crushing it. I'm loving it. I'm loving where I'm at. You know,
how does that make you feel?
Just want to let you know. Make me feel great because he cares about. He cares that I know. He wants me to know.
Yeah,
made your day. I'm sure.
Yeah,
and you know now that person wants recognition.
Yeah,
that person is
that's
motivated
a part of it
by recognition. You know, on top of the money, that's a recognition standpoint. Yeah, I mean, there's no silver bullet in business, right? I mean, everything, and that's why we do these podcasts, different topics, but every topic, just like every employee in your organization has to play their role. Every topic we discuss leads to the other, right? They're all the magic sauce, whatever you want to call it, right? Of creating a good work environment. And the thing about it is like once you get it nailed in, it's going to change. 6 months later, it's going to change, and it's going to change. So this is not a one-time thing that you have, right? It's not a one-time conversation. This needs to be ongoing conversations because as those people start at 22 in your organization, fresh out of college, what motivates them is different at 30, is different at 35. And if you want to keep people, right, and it bothers if you're the person that takes as a personal insult when people leave your organization, then you need to be even more proactive about this, that you're continually meeting their needs, and vice versa, that employee needs to be continually meeting their expectations. Yeah. And it's just a give and take conversation that needs to be happening regularly.
And happening around with every member of your organization, and including especially your leadership team.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't have to necessarily be internal. It can be external, right? Have the conversation with your accountant. Have the conversation, if you have an internal CFO, obviously they're going to be, involved in that. Have the conversation with a mentor, a coach, right? Have the conversation with what we call mentors from afar, like listen to this podcast or having different types of individuals who can help you to form these plans and then vet them with your people. Don't just unroll something.
Absolutely.
That's like a recipe for disaster.
Approach,
yeah,
right?
it cannot be a top-down approach.
And I've got another thing. Go see what your competitors are doing. What are your competitors offering their employees? You know what I mean? Because you've got to understand what your industry standard is, and you don't want to be the low end of that spectrum, right? You want to be on the higher end of that spectrum. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're paying more money, but what does it look like to go, if you work at Quick Trip, what does it look like to go over and work at that locally owned mobile across the street? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it a better experience for you? It might be, right? But if you as a business owner don't understand your people, you don't understand your competition, and all you're focused on is your product, you are going to lose. Because once you're gone, what happens to the organization? Right?
I think that if we focus on the highest priority needs of all of our stakeholders and work and create an organizational model from a compensation perspective that not only meets those but exceeds those, but most importantly explains the why and understands that this is what you need on a macro and a micro level, then we can create some cohesiveness and ultimately reach our goals.
Absolutely.
Win.
Absolutely. That's the goal. Reach our goals
and win. Yeah. It's good stuff, guys. I love it.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Thanks, man.
Do it again.
It's great.
Well, lights out indeed, both figuratively and literally. I'm so glad you joined us on this part 1 of a 2-part series on remote workers. Now, I want you to stay tuned for next week's Business Monday episode as we dig into this part 2 of how beliefs and motivation impact the decision on whether or not to bring remote workers back into the office. I'm so excited for us to be together again. I'm Dr. Nate Salah, and this is A Call to Leadership.